King Darren, your subjects would like to hear a few words from you.
Hey there, this is Darren LaCroix. If you haven't already seen video 1, go back and check it out. You'll learn the 7 reasons why great stories matter. Quick recap, if you did see it, remember, it makes you more likable. Who doesn't want to be more likable? If you're more likable, you're more likely to be referred. You're more likely to be hired, and people will be more apt to want your books and know what else you do and how you do it. Another point was to be more memorable. Nobody remembers an average story, but we remember great ones. And if we remember great stories that you told, we're gonna remember you. And one of the most powerful ones was great stories drive change. That's one of the reasons it's powerful for you and I as a presenter. That's why it's important to have great stories, not just average stories. If we're really trying to impact our audience, we're really trying to drive change in their life, and only great stories will do that. But here I am, sitting on the bench, just like in Little League. I remember I wanted to be in the game so bad. And in fact, if my father wasn't the coach, I might have never gotten the game. But when you're sitting on the bench in the speaking world, means you're waiting for somebody to hire you. Your phone isn't ringing, you're not getting requests. And I really think the big reason is great stories. Great stories, if you have them and have the ability to deliver them, you're more likely to be on the field. And I really think that's what we all want. So one of the keys to getting on the field is to telling a great story. So early on in my baseball career, I wanted to be great. And I worked hard, but I didn't really have the direction. And the difference between a good story and a great story is kind of like the difference between a fair ball that's in the game and a foul ball that's out of the game. Just because you hit it, just because you tell a story, doesn't mean it counts. Doesn't mean it lands in your listener's mind. For years, I was trying to find the story that would make my career, that launched my career, that would put me on the map. And my mentor, Dave Fitzgerald, said, Darren, he said, stop trying to find that story that launches your career. Instead, take the stories you already have and make them so good, someone will pay to hear them. That was a big aha. That was a big wow. That was the difference between a fair ball and a foul ball. So how do we get our stories into the audience's mind to make them memorable? Well, all right, so I have a flip chart on a baseball field. That's a story for another day. So if we look at the audience's mind, see, you have your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. The conscious mind is what you're thinking. So if I heard you tell a story right now, I heard you, it's here right now, it's in the conscious mind. But our real goal for a great story is to get it into the subconscious mind. So the conscious mind is what we think, but this is actually what we do. This is where our habits lie. This is where it matters. See, if you just tell a story, it might go into the conscious mind, but it's a foul ball. We're not going to remember it. You hear stories every day, but it's the ones that really matter, the great ones, that make it through to the subconscious mind. See, it's the subconscious mind that makes all the difference. That's where we change people. Remember the driving change? This is where it happens. Not what we think, but what we actually do. So with the new perspective that you've given us from your story, we're going to act differently. 2 ways to get things into the subconscious mind. Number 1, you might have heard it before, but repetition, 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 repetition. And then after you hear it 20 times, you get the aha. Well, the aha, as my coach Don Massera had told me, an aha is the letting go of a previous belief. So that means you have a new perspective. See, that's where the driving change happens. The other way to get something into the audience's subconscious mind is a story well told. A story well told will actually go right through the conscious mind and land in the subconscious mind. You know, the stories that you heard from your parents growing up, or maybe a childhood coach or a mentor, it's like they just stick with you. It's because they've made it into the subconscious mind. So remember, stop trying to tell stories, foul balls. Instead, tell stories that they stick in the audience's mind 3 days later. See, that's what makes a great story great. So I'm out here in left field, and that's how I used to tell stories. Just because I was doing it by trial and error. And a lot of people tell stories out in left field. They're just winging it. Or they have an idea, and it's okay to start that way, but you've got to have the goal of making it great. Michael Haig, a screenwriting coach, he actually works for Will Smith's company, and he says it best. He said that the purpose behind story is to elicit emotion. And if your stories aren't eliciting emotion, they're not great. I remember when I was working in the speech contest, there was 2 people who would go and listen to my speeches over and over again, and they came up and they gave me the weirdest feedback. They said, "We didn't feel anything." What? Feel? And it really is the difference between a good story and a great one. That we feel it, that it gets us emotionally involved. And so, how do you elicit emotion? We'll touch on that in the next video and the specific how-tos, but the what is eliciting emotion. You can't just wing a great story. Yeah, once in a while you might be in the emotion and caught up in the emotion and reliving your story. And you know that it's good because your emotion in your delivery connects you with the audience. But that necessarily doesn't happen every time. If you can make it, great. But even if you're in the emotion, you've got to retell it and relive it with specifics. If you're telling too much, it's still going to become boring, even though maybe you have great emotion when you're telling it or when you're delivering it. So if you want a great story, you've got to elicit emotion. When I moved here to Las Vegas, I got the chance to meet Mike Rayburn, who, if you don't know him, he's a legend in the speaking world. And I sat down with him and I asked him, what was it? What's the most important thing that presenters need to know? And he said something that was so cool and so crystallizing in my mind. He said, if you're not getting paid what you want, as often as you want, the problem is your speech. A lot of people think it's the marketing, and well, the marketing's important, but what are you marketing? If you're marketing a horrible speech, you might get 1 or 2, but it won't resonate. And since I've been in NSA, I learned over and over again that 80% of your presentations come as a result of referral. Well, if that's the case, you've got to have great stories. Stories are your brand, how good you are at telling them. And one of the challenges that I hear over and over again is, like, how do I tell a story that captivates? How do I make it memorable? And I'm definitely going to get more into that in the last video, in the next video. But one thing that comes to mind is, to make it memorable, is we need some specificity. Patricia Fripp says, specificity breeds credibility. And if you generalize or use generic terms like a phone or a cell phone, what happens is the audience doesn't create a picture in their mind or an image in their mind. The more specific you are, the more credible you are, but also the more likely the audience will see your story or picture your story. If they don't picture it, it's never going to captivate them. It's never going to stick in their mind, because we almost need that theater to happen in their mind in order to make it great. So be specific in your storytelling. Give us some details that will create that picture in your audience's mind. That's a great story. So thank God my dad was a coach, or I probably would have never gotten the game. You see, I relied on him to put me in. But you're the speaker, you're 100% responsible. If you want to get in the game, stay in the game, you've got to tell great stories. Look at the stories you have and ask yourself, how can I make them great? Because I don't want you to just get in the game. I want you to get a home run. I want you to make your great stories even greater. I hope this has shed some light on why great stories are great and what is it about them. On the next video, you're going to learn some specifics on exactly how to do that. I encourage you, ask some questions below this video. I'll interact and answer them to the best of my ability. And please share this on your social media if you learned something from this. Whether you're a professional, an emerging professional, or a speech contestant, your stories matter. I want you to be able to have a more lasting impact on everyone who hears you tell your stories.